Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Shady Boss. A few years ago, I worked at a big retail company and had for many years. Eventually, I went through enough grad school education to get my license to work at a higher level. Much more pay, more job satisfaction, more responsibilities and fancy title, but the job market was rough. I stayed on with my company to work in a floater position, where I would cover a large area and work at all the stores within that area on a rotating but irregular basis. Eventually, I wanted to get a staff position where I have a single store assigned. The area was huge, the furthest store being over 100 miles from my home, and that is exactly where I was assigned to train for the new role. It was a rough store. Folks in my position were robbed and assaulted. The neighborhood was very unfriendly. Volume at the store was among the highest in the state. Staff turnover was, as you might expect, extreme. Well, after training, I wasn't really being scheduled to float to other stores. Once a month at most. I asked to be scheduled a little more diversely, since most of the stores in my area were much closer to my home and didn't require 4 hours of driving a day. Bossman told me that I was the only floater experienced enough to handle that store. I didn't buy it, but what can you do, right? Well, a colleague told me about the mileage reimbursement policy. Floaters working at a store more than 50 miles from home can file for reimbursement of mileage over that 50 miles each way and can even include meals. So I filed a few of these out and sent them to my boss to sign. He didn't quite refuse, but he never actually signed and filed them. I suspect as soon as I left his office at our district center, he tossed them out. Bossman tells me later that they must be lost in the system. Eventually, the same colleague showed me how to fax those same forms to accounts payable, bypassing the district bossman. So I started doing just that. One day, bossman calls me in a panic. He wants to stop my filing the forms. I asked to be floated closer to home, but he won't budge. He needs me at that miserable store. He promises me he'll make me a staff role at that store if I promise to stop faxing those forms. Staff roles are a promotion and usually come with better pay and a few other little conveniences, so I agree. Bossman says there won't be a pay bump right away, but that it will come down the road. That never happened. 2 years later, the situation at the store has become too toxic, even for me. I asked to step down from the staff position to be a floater again and be allowed to float to other stores. Bossman says that I am already a floater, never been in a staff position. But that he can't let me work at other stores because it's better for me and the customers if I stay there for familiarity. Floaters do not get scheduled to stores exclusively, so I'm being singled out because they are still desperate to cover that dump of a store. I am livid, so I start looking. It took me months, but eventually I found an opportunity to make my dream career transition. I put in my formal notice and that's when the fun started. Remember that whole mileage reimbursement policy? Well, I kept meticulous track of all my shifts and there's no statute of limitations baked into the policy. So I started filling out those reimbursement forms to retroactively cover every single shift from the past 2 odd years. I skipped the meal part since I didn't want to go through all that effort of finding receipts. I had a friendly store manager sign off on them and I started sending them to accounts payable directly again. I didn't fax them in all at once, but for each shift in my final 2 weeks I faxed a few dozen in. I figured, what do I have to lose? Worst case scenario, accounts payable declines the forms. On my last few shifts I started getting the checks from accounts payable. Not added to my paycheck but sent to me directly. Mileage reimbursements are non-taxable income, so this was all tax-free money coming to me. It must have taken a while for the charges to show up on a balance sheet, because a few weeks after my final paycheck I got a call from my now former bossman. He wasn't happy. He got some big loss prevention manager involved and together they started saying I was breaking some rule by requesting the payments. They specifically claimed I was ineligible because I agreed I wouldn't be eligible in a staff position. They then threatened legal action against me if I didn't remit the full amounts back that week. But I had the email chain from Brent Bossman said I was never staff and always a floater. I politely referenced that email chain before letting them know firmly that because I was lied to, our prior agreement didn't apply and I was fully eligible all along. This was corporate policy as confirmed by HR, so I let them know I wasn't returning a single penny. In the end, the reimbursements amounted to well over $21,000 and I transitioned into my dream job. I could say that I would trade that money back for the time I lost commuting to that miserable store. 4 hours every shift. But all that pressure motivated me to make the best career move of my life. The great satisfaction of not only professionally surpassing my old boss, but getting to tell him that his lies cost him way more on the way out is almost priceless. I also shared my story and method with many colleagues who were being told wrongly by the bossman that they didn't qualify for this policy. The next story is called No Overtime, No Work. This happened years ago, when I was just starting to rake up to companies abusing employees, and employees taking it cause they are just thankful to have a job. I worked as a sales rep for a company in the technology field. Two-way radios and alarms to be specific. Said company never had enough technical staff. So I started training myself and asked our lead technician to teach me to program and sort out minor problems, as well as do installations. Which was nice, since I was doing client visits 1 to 4 times a month, depending on how big the client was, and then I could sort out problems while I was on site. I ended up doing most of my clients' installations, and the manager of the technical department was happy, cause it's less work for him. He knows I do the jobs properly, cause I want to keep my clients happy. Accordingly, he had no problem signing my timesheets and overtime hours as well. Overtime was around 10 to 20 hours a month, so 2 to 5 hours a week. Which I think was a great deal, considering I was doing the jobs of 2 people actually. It went well for a few months, until one day, just before payday, I get called in by the managing director/owner. He had my timesheets for the past few months in front of him. He asked me what they were, and I gave him an explanation. He scratched my overtime out, saying sales reps don't get paid overtime. I tried to explain to him why I was claiming overtime, and that he can ask the tech manager, but he was having none of it. I was angry as it was a little extra money, but whatever. About a week later, I was at a client about 100 miles from their office. We had a big installation and we were almost done, except for programming and tidying up some cables. I checked the time and told the apprentice technician to pack up. He was like, "But we are not done with the job." I told him I don't care, I don't get paid overtime. It's 2 PM and it's still a 2-hour drive back to the office. We packed up, the client comes out and I gave him the explanation, saying we will be back the following morning to finish what was effectively 30 to 45 minutes of work. The client wasn't happy, but understands that I don't get paid to work late. I was on the road for about 15 minutes when my phone rang. It was the owner, the same one that said I don't get paid overtime. He asked what I was doing and why I wasn't finishing the job, as the client was not happy. I told him why, and then said that he said I don't get paid overtime, so I'm not working late and will drive back to finish tomorrow. Silence for about 5 seconds, as I assume he realized I was following his express instructions and there was nothing he could do. He told me to go back and finish the job, and we can talk about it later. I told him no, unless he pays me overtime. He says he will. I tell him to put it in an email before I will turn back. I could hear him go red in the face. Then he said he will send it now. I switched on my laptop and connected my dongle. This was still before smartphones and email on phones. A few minutes later, the email came through. We turned around and finished the job. I got paid my overtime, and never again was there a query over my timesheets or hours booked. I was the only rep out of 5 that got paid overtime. The last story is called Just Move On. I used to work in computer operations, then IT support for a bank based somewhere in Scotland. Every year, 1 or 2 of us would go down to sunny Slough to mingle with our counterparts. They were from banking, education, and some place where the guys had been told to say they were from a ladies' college and definitely not the nearby secret government agency. Anyway, in 1998, we were told one of us could go across the pond to New Orleans for CA World. There we could see all the latest tech, attend seminars, talk face to face with product developers and get some training courses thrown in as a part of the package. And I was to be the lucky candidate from my team. I registered for the early bird discount and decided which courses would benefit me most. Then I booked the transatlantic flights from London via Chicago, again with a discount because computer associates were actively involved. All good, all signed off. Of course, living in Edinburgh, I still had to get to London somehow. So I found the cheapest connecting flight to Heathrow and put in the booking for approval, along with a couple of guys from other teams. Let's call them Biff and Mandy. The manager calls the 3 of us into his office. This event counts as training, so it's being paid for out of the ring-fenced training budget. Except another manager has blown the entire department's annual training budget on hiring contractors for his team. So there's no money for your £200 return flights to London. The whole shebang is therefore cancelled. Well, of course, we were all gobsmacked, because those are the breaks, right? The manager said there's nothing we can do about, so we should just move on. A week or two before the event was due to take place, Biff dropped by my desk. He asked if there were any CA seminars I'd like him to attend on my behalf. Excuse me, but what? Oh, I went over the manager's head and got my senior manager to reverse his decision. New Orleans, here I come. So I decided that I should indeed move on. I updated my CV/resume and sent it off to a couple of agencies on the Thursday before Easter. Friday and Easter Monday were bank holidays, so it wasn't until Tuesday that I got my first phone call asking if I'd like to interview with Sky TV. I turned that one down on principle, but shortly obtained a first then a second interview with a competitor in Glasgow. It would mean moving across the country, but I wasn't fast about that or even a drop in salary. Just looking to get away from the manager. Anyway, I dropped a few hints to my coworkers that I might not be around there much longer. Lo and behold, one of the senior managers presently called me aside for a wee chat. He said that he felt I was in the wrong grade and asked if I would like to come work for him with a 25% pay rise. Oh, and how would I like to attend CA World 1999? So I escaped from the bad manager, avoided having to relocate to Glasgow and had a great time in the Big Easy with Mandy the following year. I wrote such a glowing report, detailing every seminar and training course in such positive terms that it was a shoo-in for another guy from my team to attend in 2000. That manager lost a good team member over 200 pounds. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.